Hey, what's up, guys? It's Nick, Martini's Cantina here. We are back with our first ever Outer Rim special. This is a little segment that we're going to be doing with voice actors, actors, producers that just aren't in Star Wars. They have a lot of different other roles, some more notable. So this is Matthew Waterson. For me at least, I was a huge X-Men 97 fan, so I was trying to get a character from X-Men 97. So we got Magneto himself in the building. How you doing today, Matt?
Good, thank you. How are you, mate?
Good, thank you. I appreciate you for taking out the time. This is really cool.
Yeah.
This is my first X-Men 97, like I said earlier, so this will
I'll
be cool.
try not to make it terrible.
I'm sure it won't be. Do you mind just giving a little background about how you kind of got into voice acting and some of
Sure.
your inspirations and stuff, and kind of go from there, bridge off that?
Yeah, absolutely. So uh, I went to drama school in England. I went to Lambda, and then at the end of Lambda, I went to New York because I figured you either need to have zero responsibilities or you need to be incredibly wealthy to have fun in New York. And I was right. I had no responsibilities, and so it was great. So I went to New York and I was studying theater, and one of the agency that represented me for commercial also had a voice division, and they sent me to the voice division, and I, did a little bit with them, and then one of my closest friends from university called me and said, "Hey, somebody who you knew a little bit at university, but who is one of my other closest friends, is also in New York. You guys would get along. Go hang out. You guys would I think you guys would be friends." So I met up with this friend Heather, and we hung out, and she was right. Heather and I get along great. Heather was. It happened to be an agent at another voiceover agency, at an agency called Atlas. And after about 6 months, she sort of said, "Look, I don't normally try and steal clients, but you're not going out much, and we actually need somebody who sounds like have a younger English accent. Are you interested?" And I said, "Yeah, sure," because I wasn't signed to the other agency. So they started sending me out, and they sent me out a ton. And I sort of started. I was lucky. I started booking pretty quickly. So that agency decided they liked me, and I just got lucky. That agency was sort of a newish agency at that point. It was a few agents who had left another bigger agency and started their own. And since then, that agency has become one of the big sort of powerhouse voice agencies. And so I just kind of got lucky that I was brought in at the right time, and I got lucky that I started booking work. And so I was in New York for a little under 10 years and doing theater and voiceover. And honestly, two things: voiceover pays better than theater does.
Mhm.
And also in theater, I look the way I look, and I can only go out for the stuff that I can go out for. In voiceover, I can do anything I can sound like. So I was getting to do monsters and, small people, big people, old people, young people. It didn't matter. I mean, Magneto, for example, is a 65-year-old German guy.
Yeah.
I could sort of do whatever I could actually sound like. So I started really enjoying voice work. And after about 8 years in, I was sort of told, you will probably get work in animation and video games, but you need to go to California for that, at least so that people can meet you in person and kind of get familiar with you. So I did that, and it worked. Again, Heather, my agent, was correct. I sort of said, "You just want me to move because your agency had moved you to LA and you want company." And she said, "Yes, but also you will actually work if you come out here." So I did that, and I got lucky, and I've that was the point at which I was able to stop doing other jobs pretty much and just make a living as an actor. And so that was about 10 years ago now, and have sort of been working in voiceover exclusively since. So, and I kind of got very fortunate, and that's kind of the case for everybody. It works out differently for everybody, but like I had done no animation. I'd started getting work in video games, but I'd done no animation. And then I got cast in what was supposed to be like a one or maybe a two episode role in an animated show. And then the head of the studio just decided she liked the character. And so she told production, "Well, keep him." And so they kept the character, and they kept the character. And then once they'd kept the character for longer, now, the way storytelling works, that character is now built up more background, more emotion, more connections. So you can't make them disappear or off them just willy nilly. You have to earn it. And so they were like, "Well, we don't have the place to earn it yet." And that character ended up being in the entire series, which, I was supposed to do 2 episodes, and I ended up doing like 30 episodes of a 50 episode show. And that kind of gave that sort of gave the animation world, the ability to go, "Oh yeah, he's done a good amount." And that show was, Guillermo del Toro and Mark Guggenheim and the Hageman brothers and all of these people from Pixar. So it had a legitimacy to it and people liked it. So it meant that after that, people sort of felt a little more safe hiring me. But that was luck. Like if they had known going in how big that character would be, it was Guillermo del Toro. He could get anybody who he wanted. They would have got a big name because everybody else on the show is a big name.
Yeah.
So I worked my way into it, and I've been very, very fortunate as well, which is usually the way. There's nobody. If anybody says, "Well, it was just me, nobody helped me," they're full of it. Like you need to get lucky, and you need to have people who are on your side. And I got lucky when I got out to LA. I had, a casting director for gaming under Atoyas who just sort of decided that she liked what I did, and so she's used me a lot. And then, the casting office at DreamWorks were great to me, and Meredith Lane, who cast and voice directs X-Men, has been amazing, and she's put me in a whole bunch of stuff. And so you always need somebody or some people to just decide, well, we like what that person does, and start using you, and that kind of helps everybody else to go, oh yeah, I can see what to do with them now. I might not have figured it out just immediately, but now I kind of get it. And if I bring them into a studio or I bring them into a production, I can point to these other things that they've done. So that was kind of how I got into it, and the stuff that led me to where I am. And in terms of like inspiration or background, I was lucky in that I came across, when we moved to England when I was 10 years old, on the flight over, I was listening to sort of the radio on effectively the radio on the plane, because this was in 1989, so we didn't all have TVs in the seatbacks and things. And there was a BBC station on it which had a show that was a 50s and 60s radio show called The Goon Show. And The Goon Show was Peter Sellers, Harry Seacombe, and Spike Milligan. And they effectively had like 25 characters that the three of them did in rep. And they would write scripts every week of completely different situations and put the same characters in them and just go. And the characters were absurdist. But I sort of became obsessed with that. And so for years, I would go to sleep every night listening to old episodes of The Goon Show, which is just these three guys doing 25 different characters between them in all different setups. So that kind of gave me a very comfortable familiarity with the idea of like, okay, how do you adjust and twist around the things that you can do with your voice to create different characters?
So when you were saying that you did a theater for a little bit,
Yeah.
was your goal when you first went into like college, the school, was, hey, I want to go into theater and voice acting, or did you kind of just do that to get your foot in the door and the end goal was voice acting for you?
No, I didn't go to university originally for acting at all. I went for political science and mathematics.
Okay.
And then when I got out, I decided I'm going to give this a whirl. And I tried for a couple of years in LA just to get any work as an actor. And then realized that if I was going to do this, I would be better off actually knowing what I was doing. So I should actually go to drama school.
Hmm.
So then I applied and went to London. And coming out of there, the assumption was, one of the things that it's changing now here, but at least in the UK, because it's a smaller market, there's always been this idea of, if you're an actor, you will do anything. You will do film, you'll do TV, you'll do theater, you'll do radio plays, you'll do whatever it is. And so, I went to New York with the idea of doing anything that would work. And people had mentioned voice work to me once or twice in the past, but I wasn't really focusing on it, and it was one that I kind of just fell into. And then I've never really worked on camera. I never really had a film or TV career, but I was working in theater, and I love working in theater. But I was also like I said, I was kind of getting frustrated because like the last year that I was actually actively pursuing theater, the way that theater works is that, there were 3 shows that had been either on Broadway or had been revived recently, and they had just become available for all the regional theaters. So I auditioned for the same 3 shows, each one about 10 times for every regional theater in the country. And I kind of was like, this is the same stuff. And it was not as fun as it might have been. Meanwhile, for voiceover, I was getting to audition for orcs and trolls and gremlins and monsters and knights and peasants and all sorts of stuff and soldiers. So it was a lot more dynamic in what I was getting to do and a lot more varied. So it was a lot more fun. And so, and also, film and TV pay the most and theater kind of pays the least, and voiceover is in the middle. Like voiceover, you can actually make a living. In theater, it's tough. It's really tough unless you are famous from film or television. But in theater, it's really tough unless you're a really big name. And it's really tough if you're not in musical theater. And I cannot sing. so that was not an option for me.
That's fair. I
So
can't either.
yeah, and like musicals will run for years. A
Mhm.
play won't, because a play will have a limited run. So you could be the lead in a Broadway play, and it'll last for 4 or 5 months, and then you got to get another play. You got to get another job immediately because it, you know. And so that was tough. So I started getting voiceover. I started working in voiceover, and that sort of built naturally, and the amount of work I got every year sort of built naturally. And so it got to a point where I sort of went, all right, I think I can kind of make this work if it turns out what I've been told is correct, and I can keep working the amount that I've worked and add some video game and animation stuff. I think I can actually support myself on this. And so I that was when I moved from New York to LA, and it was tight for the first year, but I sort of made it through. And then from then on, I kind of got lucky, and like that, like I said, that first animated series, Troll Hunters, I kept that show sort of alone was not a lot of money, but it was just enough extra money that it kind of covered the extra bit. And I was like, oh, I can afford to live cheaply in Los Angeles, but I can just sort of afford to make it. And so that was when my progression went. But I did not grow up with the intention or the plan of just being a voice actor. It was something that I was aware of because of my background and because of the stuff that I listened to and watched as a kid. But it wasn't the thing that I was hell bent on doing. I just
Gotcha.
wanted to act.
So Magneto being an X-Men 97, obviously, probably I would say one of the biggest animation shows of the past 10 years, really. Like it's been really taken by storm, and I know everyone's super excited for season two.
Hmm.
Now, X-Men 97, especially Magneto, I feel like I'm a big comic book guy.
Hmm.
I know that a lot of the episodes, even though they weren't truly based, but they were based in some sorts, more
Yeah.
specifically like the trial of Magneto. Did
Right.
you read any of the comics? Like, were you a comic book kid growing up, or like just a Marvel DC fan at all? Or is it just something you kind of always just liked in the background and you got the option to play Magneto and you're like, sure, let's do it.
It's more the second one. Like
Okay.
I always liked the stuff. I was not somebody who was buying comics or things like that. I was in boarding school in England, so
Hmm.
the stuff that I had access to was everything was kind of communal property because people would bring in the things that they had, and then you would finish reading that, and then you would sort of start sharing them around and swapping them around. So I the stuff that I had was mostly stuff that came from other people, and in actual fact, most of the stuff that I remember growing up was more from like 2000 AD. Like there was a lot of Judge Dredd comics and things like that. And one of the ones I actually remember the most clearly was like a crossover between Judge Dredd and Batman, which was just a really good. I was like, even now I think back and I'm like, yeah, that's a great pairing because there's so many similarities between those two, but also so many ways for them to just be furious at each other and not trust each other, which was kind of what it was. So I was familiar with all of it, and I was aware of, and I knew the basics of most of the worlds, or at least the more popular ones, but I didn't have the kind of background in it that a lot of people do, and that's kind of been the case in the show. About half the people in the show are just steeped in it, both in the original animated series and in the comics, and about in terms of the cast, and
Yeah.
about half the cast are people like me who were aware of it and knew about it, but didn't have quite as much of a connection to it until they got involved in the show. And then, of course, there's the members of the cast that were the ones doing it in the 90s who have a much longer and stronger connection to it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, is it like you and AJ and Gus? Like, are you guys just not as like I mean Lenore and Allison, like they've been at that show doing conventions, being around X-Men for like 20, 20 years at this point.
Right.
Like would you say that there was it harder for you to have like an understanding? Because like X-Men to me, I know a lot of people will agree this is super like complicated just with all the different worlds and all the
Sure.
different movies that they have coming out now. Was it kind of hard to grasp the story narrative that they were trying to go off of, like just in terms of emotion or where they were trying to guide the episodes at all?
So the way that this sort of works is that I only get scripts for the episodes that I'm in, and
Hmm.
I'm Magneto is not in every episode,
Yeah.
so there's always stuff in the script, even in the scripts I'm in, that things that are happening that are based on events and episodes that I've not read. And so there's always a certain amount of stuff that you just take it for granted if you're not going to understand until you see the show when it comes out because
Hmm.
you just didn't read that. In terms of what I understood and what I took from my character, I had I was sort of mixed. I I felt like I had a pretty clear idea of what we were doing, and then in all honesty, of a few months in, well, not a few months in, for the first few months, I was pretty convinced that I had no idea what I was doing and that I was tanking the whole thing.
Yeah.
Because we record solo. Like I've recorded the entire show in this booth right here at home,
Hmm.
and so I didn't have any idea what anybody else was doing.
Hmm.
And I am not visually creative in the way that the directors and the animators and things are. So when I would read this incredibly detailed description of like the action that was happening in the script, I didn't I couldn't see that in my mind. Like I could read it and I could understand it, but I didn't really have an idea in my mind, a vision of what it was going to look like. So it meant that there's a huge amount of trust that you have to put in to production, into Meredith, the director, into the writers, into the episode directors, so that you take the character and you take everything you know, and the writers had sat down and explained and talked through stuff with us at the beginning of recording, and then at the beginning of each season, and said, like, this is what we're doing, this is what the plan is, this is where the character is going, this is what your character is kind of dealing with, so that we had a holistic overall idea of what we were playing with. And then a lot of it is, and this is tough, but I actually kind of like it. You have to kind of just take each scene and each episode for what it is. You can't try and put too much of a holistic thing into it, because you don't know everything that's happening. You don't know all the background stuff. You don't know stuff that other characters are doing, things that are happening in the story. You don't always necessarily even know exactly where the whole story of the episode or the season even is going. So you have to just kind of focus on, well, what's happening right here? What's happening in this episode? What's happening in this scene? Who am I talking to? Why? Where am I? What is the point of this conversation or this piece of action? What am I trying to do? And then you have to have the trust in production to listen when they say, great, we need you to adjust this way or that way because of other things that you're not aware of, or because we know what delivery the other person in the scene has already given, or we know what delivery we're going to direct them to give. So we don't need that from you, we need this from you. And you have to be able to just say, okay, I trust you. I trust that when you tell me that, you have the whole thing in your head constructed. So I need to give you, I've given you the thing that was my instinct or my decision, my choice. Now I need to give you the thing that you asked for, and just trust you're going to have both of those. And when it comes to editing, you're going to put in all the bits and figure out which works best. But I need to make sure I give you the things that you go in knowing you need. And so there's a huge amount of trust that as the cast of this show, we have to have in Meredith and in the writers and in the directors, that when they give us a note or give us an adjustment, even if it's one that may not make sense to us in the exact moment, that they know what they're doing. And so far, they have not steered us wrong. So it's really easy to put the trust in it. And like I said, Meredith has been incredibly good to me, and she's put me in a whole bunch of stuff she's done. And so at this point, it doesn't matter how bizarre a note she might give me, and she doesn't, but if she gave me a really strange note, I would just go, that's weird, but I'm doing it. I trust you, because she has not steered me wrong once.
Gotcha. So like, I guess that's interesting that like I always get like dumbfounded that like people like record at home. Like it's not like a thing that you guys are sitting around in a circle kind of doing. I know one of
No.
my favorite portions of the show and any type of X-Men in general is Magneto and Rogue. I mean, there's
Uh-huh.
always like that sense of chemistry there, like that passion. I know it keeps my girlfriend interested because there's a little bit of romance in there.
Sure.
So for like that, when you get your script, you're only seeing Magneto's lines, right? You're not
No,
seeing.
no, no.
Are
I
you seeing
get the whole.
Rogues too?
Yeah, I get the
Okay,
whole
okay,
script, but I only get the scripts of the episodes I'm in.
okay.
So like episode whatever it was, like 6 and 7.
Yeah,
I didn't know anything that happened in those until it was released on Disney Plus.
gotcha. So like when you say, you say a line, right? Do you take a
Mhm.
pause or do you just keep going and they kind of fill in the gaps there? I'm just
So
curious.
usually the way we do it is, it depends. If it is just like one or two like wild lines, like one or two lines like in a fight scene or something like
Yeah.
that, then I'll just do 3 takes of a line, then go on to the next one. If it's a scene, usually the director Meredith will read with us. So she'll read the other half. So you're going back and forth. One time they did, like early on, they did organize a Zoom session between Lenore and I for the scene in like episode 2, I think it is, or 3, where Lenore comes to where Rogue comes to Eric in Xavier's office, like right after he's arrived at the mansion, and there's a sort of reveal of like, oh, we're that they have a past. They did organize a Zoom session for that, just so that we could actually have met, because like I didn't meet most of the cast until the premiere, and I didn't even meet half the cast in the premiere. Like Catherine Disher, I only met like 8 weeks ago, maybe, for the first time, because we were at a convention together.
Was it New York or?
That the one we met at was LA, I think.
Oh, okay, LA Comic Con.
Yeah, LA,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then
yeah.
a couple weeks later we did like New York and Cincinnati. And I love Kathy; she's amazing. But I
She's
had
so
met,
nice. Yeah.
yeah, she's amazing. But I had met her, and so like it took until then to meet everybody in the cast, because it's a big cast, and all the original cast are in Canada, across Canada. Most are in Toronto, but some are in different parts. The new additions to the cast are mostly in Southern California, but like Jen Hale is up in Canada, and like other people sort of move around. So they did that for people where they could, to organize like a Zoom thing, just so that people had a little interaction and had heard the person they're playing with where they could. I think like I think they did one between like Lenore and AJ as well, because obviously getting the right interaction between Rogue and Gambit is also incredibly important. So
Yeah.
I did a couple of those with certain people, but it was not a regular occurrence. It would be like once or twice, just to kind of get the feel of playing off of each other, and then everyone's recording on their own.
Gotcha. And when I was doing notes and stuff, I saw that there were some other parts that you were involved with at X-Men 97, if I'm not wrong. Wasn't it World Leader? You were one of the world leaders and stuff?
Yeah, I think in episode 2, in the trial episode, I think I was one of the
I
oh, no. Towards the end, in like an 8, 9, or 10, something like that. When you were hearing world leaders on like
Yeah,
video
yeah,
streams, I was there. I was one of the judges of my own trial in
yeah.
episode 2. I was one of the judges there. And I think I was also one of the guards in episode 2 as well.
Yes, that was it. Now, do you
Yeah.
get like, so do they kind of disperse the cast throughout that? Like, you're not going in saying, okay, now you're Magneto. Okay, by the way, you're also going to be a random guard. Like,
Yeah.
do they kind of just throw it into you in the beginning, or they just see the need for people and they're like, hey, can you do this really quick? And
So the way that it usually works is that the way that so the union contracts allow for, like, when they pay you for a session,
Mhm.
it includes, and I don't remember this explicitly, and it includes either 2 or 3 character voices.
Okay.
So what happens is, when they have, especially when they have a cast as big as ours is, where you've got 10, 12 people,
Yeah.
maybe not in every episode, but in most episodes, you've probably got between 6 and 8 people, which means theoretically between them, you've got, if it is 3, I can remember, let's say, but you've got, 18 to 24 voices that you can utilize. So what will happen is they'll be like, okay, yeah, well, you're in this one, but we also need, a security guard here, a pedestrian here, this there, a robbery victim there.
Hmm.
They'll just have us, fill in those 1 or 2 lines of screams or things like that, because on a one line throwaway sort of here or there, that's an easy way and a cost efficient way for them to sort of fill out the cast. And because voiceover is voiceover, all of us have so many other sort of voices or tweaks or dialects or whatever that we can do, that, especially if it's 1 or 2 here and there, it is not, it's not usually something that, unless it's someone who knows us well, or an engineer or a director or one of our agents, is probably not going to pick up on that it's the same person.
Gotcha. And like, just with all of that, so much, I don't know, popularity coming to X-Men, would you say like conventions has been a really good way for you to like connect with fans and to keep in touch with your fellow castmates? I mean, I know that you just kind of went like on a little convention run. Do you
Yeah.
enjoy doing conventions all the time? Like, they seem cool from your perspective, I'm sure.
Yeah, I was honestly a little apprehensive. I'm an introvert. I don't like being in large groups of people. It's not enjoyable to me. And
Hmm.
so when conventions started becoming an option, 8 months ago or so, my wife and I talked about it, and also we have small kids, so we were like, okay, well, let's let's try a few and see how the kids handle me being away because they're not used to me being gone.
Mm,
Let's see how, it works for us. Let's see how it is for me to actually do the shows. And so in all honesty, my assumption going in was that the travel was fine because I've traveled a lot of my life. I'm like, I've been lucky, so I'm able, I would be like, yeah, the travel's going to be fine. Doing the show itself will be uh, okay, but we'll see. It might be a little stressful and be a little difficult. Doing the shows themselves have actually been great.
mm,
The travels turn out to be the thing that is just a killer because, just the virtue of how it works logistically. I'm just away for a lot more than I would like to be, and it is stressful and everything on the family, but the conventions themselves have been great. Like I said, that's how I've managed to actually get to meet and spend time with the cast because I hadn't otherwise. So that's almost the exclusive way that I've spent time with the cast. So like I I had one that I did in Nashville because I'd agreed to do one for the same producer somewhere else. And then my agent got a call and said, "Hey, we just had someone drop out of Nashville. It's last minute. It's a little con. Isn't we already have Ross doing it because it's a local one for Ross.
mm.
Is Matthew willing to do it?" And so I looked at it and I went, "Okay, I'm free that weekend." Also, I'd only met Ross very briefly at the premiere, and I said, like, no, it'd be great to actually go and hang out with Ross for a weekend and get to know him a little bit because Eric and Charles have such a strong connection,
Yeah.
and in the 10 minutes I got to talk to him at the premiere, I really liked him. So I said, great. So I went to Nashville for a weekend and did it, and we actually got to hang out and get to know each other, and I adore him. He's one of my favorite people now, and we're in touch all the time. So the conventions have been great in terms of getting to get friendly and comfortable with my cast. It's
Mm,
also been great because that's the kind of the only real feedback. I don't know. Social media is social media, but it's tough to take any of it as real.
yeah.
But actually getting to go to conventions and meet and spend 5 minutes talking to people when they come up to the tables is really, really nice. And getting to hear the things about this show in particular that meant something to somebody, because this show has so many allegories to so many parts of the real world and so many things that are conflicts and are problems for people in the real world. Having people come and say, hey, this was the bit that meant something to me because of how it reflected or, gave another look to people in my life about some of the things that I go through. It's been really, really nice to have people come up and be able to tell us the parts that meant something to them, either because of nostalgia or because, we've had a lot of people, I've had a lot of people come up at conventions and say, I have members of my family who we have not got along for a while because of the just differences in who we are. And this is something that we actually would watch together, and it helped us have a conversation because now nobody felt like they were being attacked. Like we could draw parallels for, well, I kind of felt like that character did in this because it kind of, in this case it's mutants and humans, but that kind of mirrors some of my experience. And so I've had people come up to me who've had real problems in relationships with family members or close friends and say, watching this together and then being able to talk about it helped us to start to have a conversation again. And that is not something that I anticipated having going into this. I was like, no, this will be cool. It's a superhero. It's X-Men. It'll be a great job. It'll be a lot of fun. Those kind of conversations and having people come and say that those things are happening in their lives as a result of the show was not something I had on my bingo card for this year.
Gotcha. Do you feel like, or is there like a certain scene? I feel like the trial of Magneto is obviously probably one of the top ones, but do you have like certain scenes and quotes that people come up to you often? And you're like, this is one of my favorite parts of X-Men, or what's one that you've got the most feedback from?
Yeah, I mean the trial of Magneto and the speech that he gives when he's taking the judges up in the air with the executioner
Yeah.
is a big one.
That's the
Um,
I'm trying to be better, right?
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I love that
yeah,
part. It's great. That's a great
that's a
scene.
big one. A couple of his like sort of more catty lines, but especially like in episode 5, I've had a lot of people come up about the response to Val Cooper when she says not many nations choose terrorists for their leaders, and
Mhm.
Eric responds, but so many nations allow their leaders to become terrorists. That one has I've had a lot of people come up about that, and of course I didn't write any of these. They wrote them for me, fortunately. But and then also in that episode, the the once the attack happens, the visualization of him using a train as a whip against the attackers, and then seeing the flashbacks for him of the stormtroopers, and like, because this is not a Saturday morning network show anymore, it is a streaming show that is kind of meant to bridge between sort of kids and adults. We've been able to be much more explicit about his background. Like in the original animated series, they could just say that he lost his family during a conflict. They couldn't be explicit about, no, he's Jewish, and he and his family were taken into an internment camp, and he's the only one who lived. The rest of them were exterminated. Like, they weren't able to be as clear about that. And being able to be very specific and clear about that I've had people come up to me to talk about that explicitly, because they said it's really nice to not have to dance around reality, and to be able to say, no, this kind of thing leads to this kind of thing. And it's important that this is shown as like what the ramifications of this kind of treatment of people are.
Gotcha. And going back just into filming a little bit, is
Mhm.
there, I know that there was like a few like soft news. I don't know how much you could talk about it, but I know that there was a plan for a season two. Is that still on board for season two?
Oh, we're greenlit through 3 seasons so far.
Three
So
seasons. Oh,
three
okay.
seasons we're greenlit through. Yeah, Disney and Marvel have they announced officially that season 2 was happening, but right before we premiered, and then pretty soon, a month or so after the show premiered, they confirmed season 3, and we're well. I mean, honestly, we were well into season 2 before the show premiered.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Because we started working on it, like I started working on this at the beginning of 2021.
Hmm.
And the first season was originally planned to come out, is my understanding, in 23. And then I think it is external things like just Marvel's planning around everything else they had. They just had so much stuff out in 23 that they kind of went, we're not going to add to it. And they had a lot lighter 24, so they pushed it
Hmm.
into 24. So if that had happened, I think they were originally going with the idea that, well, season 2 will be in 24, and then everything got pushed, so it sort of got slowed down. But we're well into season 2 at this point
Oh, that's
in
awesome.
terms of production. Yeah.
Do you have any other projects that you've been working on? I know that you have a very extensive video game past, just to
Yeah.
name a few, like Black Ops 4, League of Legends, Fallout 4. Is there any video games or anything else that you're kind of working on in the
Yeah.
background?
Yeah, there are, and games are a tough one. Like this was the first animated show where I had like really heavy NDAs, because Marvel is Marvel.
Hmm.
But video game, but the as heavy as they were kind of commensurate with what most video game NDAs are. Like, it's funny, my wife's family has a lot of people in the military in it, and they all have very fancy security clearances and things like that. And it often feels like they have more flexibility about being able to talk about their work than we do, which is absurd, because what we do is not on the same level of life and death. But to the games companies, they are very strict about that. So yeah, I am fortunate in that I'm not great at social media. I usually just repost stuff once it comes out,
Yeah.
so it kind of helps me from like accidentally revealing stuff. But yeah, we've got a handful of stuff that is coming out, and that's the other problem, is I never know when it's coming out, because they half the time never know quite when
Yeah.
it's coming out.
Yeah. Once you're done your role, it's not like you're on set, like
Yeah.
for an in-person thing. Like you can just move on to your next project then.
Yeah, and like I was working, like Black Ops 6 just came out,
Yeah.
but I had been working on that like ages ago, and so
Hmm.
I did not, I like, it suddenly came out, and I found out it came out like after it came out, and it was like, oh, I thought that had come out, because I was working on that a long time ago. It's like, no, it came out when it came out. So yeah, I've got a handful of things. I'm trying to think if there's anything that I can actually give a name of. I don't think there is, but yeah,
Okay, if there isn't. Yeah, yeah, I
there's a
get
bunch of
that.
games. That was the thing. Like, I'm just thinking, like, the games that came out this year, like Elder Scrolls and Black Ops 6 and like Behemoth.
Hmm.
Like, a lot of them are ones that I've been working on for a couple of years. And like Hogwarts Legacy, which came out a couple of years ago, I've been working on that game for like 5 or 6 years by the time it came out. So
That's a wild turnaround time.
yeah,
I know
well,
like
I'm
one of the
not.
most common turnaround times right now is like I don't know how often you see it, but like the memes of like GTA 6.
Uh
It's like we've had, another world war before GTA 6 comes out. Like that game has it's been taking like 12 years, I feel like at this point. It's been a long time, so I
Well,
can't
and
even
those are
imagine.
the big open world games are just so big.
Oh yeah.
Like the ones that they do, like whether it's that or like Red Dead or like a lot of these or Fallouts, like a lot of the
Hmm.
Bethesda games, like these massive open world games, they're so big that to explore the entire map and to program the entire map and to set everything, like it's such a mammoth undertaking. But that's the thing. Like, if it's a game that's going to come out and then it's going to be 120 hours of play on it, you're like, all right,
Hmm.
that can take 8 years to come out. If a game
Yeah.
comes out and it's like 11 hours or 8 hours of play, you're like, you better be able to turn this around every like 18 months. But
That's
again,
fair.
like even still, like the game, even the games that aren't as long, it's like the amount of crunch that the devs have to go through to get those things out is absolutely insane. Like the the amount of work that it takes the developers and the amount of like 100-hour weeks that those people have to put in to get the games out is just brutal. So it's anytime anything comes out, I'm impressed.
That's fair. There's so much going into that. I know, like when I was younger, I played a ton of video games. I don't anymore, but like just Black Ops in general, like it was just one of those games that I'm like, I don't know how they did it, but this is just fantastic. Like all the different
Yeah,
maps and all the different
yeah,
guns and just everything about it is so complex. I can't even imagine how long GTA and all those kind of and Red Dead would
yeah.
actually take to make, just animation wise, design
Well,
wise.
and that's why it's years. You look at how long it is between GTA's or like between Fallouts.
Hmm.
It's a big time jump, or the Horizon Zero Dawn game. Like it's a big jump because there's a lot to do. There's a lot to produce. I mean, in one of the Call of Duty games, I remember talking to the writer when we were doing it. I think it was Black Ops 3, and he was saying like he was writing. I don't know. I'm gonna get the number wrong, but it was something like 50,000 lines of dialogue. Like
That's
it's
probably, yeah, that's wild.
it's absurd how much they have to write, and that's not a game like a GTA or a Fallout or a Red Dead or something. It's I think some of those games must be into easily into like the 100,000 lines, which is just you think of like I doubt even that the guys on Game of Thrones had to write 100,000 lines for their entire series.
Yeah. Thank you so much for talking to me about all that.
Yeah, man.
I really appreciate you coming on to the show. Guys, down below, there's going to be a ton of links and stuff to all the Matthews socials and schedules when they come out. I know, check out my Instagram. I always try to repost things like that, especially after
Thank
they're
you for
on the
that.
show. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. Thanks for taking the time to talk to me. I know we met at New York Comic Con and
yeah.
you were down from the start really to do one. And speaking of Ross, I actually am hoping to get Ross on soon. I'm
Oh, great.
talking to Disney right now, trying to get that all situated.
Yeah,
But
I'm waiting for a message back. He is a busy man. I'm
oh
actually waiting
yeah.
for a message back from him as well, just because he is that guy is every single weekend that guy is out working.
Oh yeah, he's in literally every single Marvel show and movie that you
Yeah,
like. He has something to do with it.
yeah. He's kind of Marvel's talisman now for good luck.
Literally. Well, thank you again. I really appreciate it. Guys, like I
Thank you,
said,
Nick.
everything will be down below. This is Matt. I'm Nick. Have a drink on the galaxy, guys.